The morning started like any other Tuesday for Commander Jake Morrison, who was drinking his third cup of coffee on the bridge of Earth Defense Station Alpha when the alarm began screaming. The sound made everyone jump and spill their drinks. "Sir, we have something big coming out of hyperspace," called out Lieutenant Karen White from her control station. Her voice was shaking a little, really big. Jake put down his coffee and walked over to the main viewing screen. What he saw made his stomach drop. A massive black ship was appearing right above Earth. It was so huge that it blocked out part of the sun. The ship looked like it was made of dark metal and glass. It had strange lights running along its sides that pulsed like a heartbeat. "How big is that thing?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice calm. 15 kilometers long, sir," Karen replied. "Maybe more. Space sensors are having trouble getting exact numbers." Jake had been in space for 20 years. He had seen every type of ship that humans had ever built. This was not human. This was something else entirely. Something that should not exist. Down on Earth, in a deep underground room in Washington, Admiral Lisa Carter was having the worst day of her life. Red lights were flashing everywhere in the Pentagon's Situation Room. Military officers were running around with papers and tablets. Everyone was talking at once. "Madame Admiral," said Colonel Pete Johnson, holding a tablet with shaking hands. "The object appeared exactly 17 minutes ago. Our satellites show its position directly over the Atlantic Ocean." Lisa nodded and looked at the big screen on the wall. The alien ship looked like a floating mountain. It was so large that weather patterns were already changing beneath it. Clouds were forming strange spirals around its hull. President Kevin Walsh entered the room with his security team. He was a tall man with gray hair who usually looked calm and in control. Today he looked worried and tired. "What are we dealing with here?" the president asked. "Unknown alien vessels, sir," Lisa replied. "Nothing in our databases matches anything like this. The technology appears to be far beyond our current capabilities." Dr. Frank Miller, the chief scientist for the space program, stepped forward. He was an older man with thick glasses who knew more about space than almost anyone else on Earth. "Mr. President," Frank said, "the energy readings we're getting from that ship are incredible. The power source alone could probably run all of Earth's cities for 100 years. President Walsh sat down heavily in his chair. "Any signs of hostile intent?" "Not yet, sir," Lisa answered. "It's not responding to any of our communication attempts either." The waiting was the worst part. For 3 hours, the giant ship just hung there in space like a dark cloud. People all over Earth were pointing at the sky and taking pictures. The internet was going crazy with videos and theories about what was happening. Then everything changed. Captain Helen Brooks was in her office at the United Nations building in New York when her communication device started beeping. Helen was Earth's top expert on first contact protocols. She had spent years studying how to talk to aliens if they ever showed up, just never thought it would actually happen. The beeping meant that someone was trying to talk to Earth from space. Helen ran to the main communication center as fast as she could. Her heart was beating so hard she could hear it in her ears. "This is Captain Brooks," she said into her microphone. "Earth acknowledges your transmission." What happened next would be remembered forever. A voice filled the room. It was not human. It sounded like clicking and whistling and strange musical notes all mixed together. But somehow, the words that came out were in perfect English. "Primitive species of the third planet," the voice said. It sounded cold and superior, like a teacher talking to very young children. "We are the Galactic Council. We've been watching you." Helen's hands were shaking as she replied, "This is Captain Helen Brooks representing Earth and humanity. Welcome contact with your people. Welcome." The alien voice made a sound like laughter, but not friendly laughter. "You misunderstand your situation, small beings." Back in the Pentagon, everyone was listening to the conversation through speakers. President Walsh was gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles were white. The alien continued speaking. "We are High Counselor Vexthera of the Galactic Council. Your species has recently begun expanding beyond your home system. This cannot be allowed without proper tribute." "Tribute?" Helen asked. "What kind of tribute, according to galactic law?" 847, the alien said. All new species must pay for protection and guidance. You will give us 60% of your military. Ships. You will give us 40% of your raw materials. You will also provide us with 10,000 of your best people for our research programs. The room went completely silent. Everyone stared at each other in shock and horror. Helen tried to keep her voice steady. And if we refuse, refusal is not permitted, Vexthera replied. Species that refuse are marked as hostile. Hostile species are eliminated. President Walsh stood up slowly. His face was pale but determined. He motioned for Helen to let him speak. This is President Walsh of Earth, he said. How much time do we have to consider your demands? You have 72 of your planet's rotations, the alien answered. 3 days in your time measurement. This is generous. Most species are given only 1 day. The communication ended with a sharp click. The giant ship continued floating above Earth like a threat made real. General Paul Martinez, head of Earth Space Command, was the first to break. The silence. Sir, our computers show the alien fleet has over 300 ships. We have maybe 50 vessels that could fight in space, and most of those are exploration ships with basic weapons. Dr. Amanda Foster, who studied alien life, looked sick. The research programs they mentioned, she said quietly. Based on our knowledge of similar demands made to other species, they're talking about slavery. They want to take 10,000 humans as slaves. President Walsh walked to the window and looked up at the sky. Even though it was daytime, the alien ship was visible as a dark spot against the blue. They've done this before? He asked. 47 times, Amanda replied. Every time the species submitted. No one has ever refused. What happened to those species? Amanda's voice was barely a whisper. They became servants. Their planets became resource farms. Their people became workers for the council. Within a generation, most of their cultures disappeared completely. The president turned back to face the room. His expression was grim, but resolute. Then we have 3 days to decide the future of humanity, he said. Get me the United Nations Secretary General, the heads of every major nation, and our best military strategists. If we're going to make this choice, we're going to make it together. Outside, the alien ship waited in the darkness of space, confident that Earth would surrender just like all the others before them. They had no idea what they were dealing with. The United Nations building in New York had never seen anything like this before. Representatives from every country on Earth were rushing through the hallways. Phones were ringing constantly. Security guards were trying to control the crowds. Of reporters outside, Secretary General Carlos Rivera stood at the podium in the main assembly hall. He was a calm man who had dealt with many world crises before, but this was different. This was bigger than any war or disaster in human history. Ladies and gentlemen, Carlos said into the microphone, we face a choice that will determine whether humanity remains free or becomes slaves to an alien empire. The hall was packed with more people than it was designed to hold. Every seat was filled. People were standing along the walls. Video screens showed the faces of world leaders joining from their home countries. Senator John Phillips from the United States was the first to speak. He was an older man with gray hair who usually talked about budgets and taxes. Today he was talking about the survival of the human race. The mathematics are simple, John said, standing at his desk. They have 300 ships. We have 50. They have technology we cannot understand. We have weapons that are probably useless against them. If we fight, we die. Murmurs of agreement came from many delegates. The Russian representative nodded. The German chancellor looked worried but seemed to agree, but Colonel Mary Stevens was not ready to give up. She had just returned from a failed mission to make contact with aliens in another star system. She had seen things that most humans could not imagine. She stood up from her seat in the observer section. Permission to address the assembly, Mary? Called out. Carlos nodded. The chair recognizes Colonel Stevens. Mary walked to the speaker's platform. She was a tough woman who had spent her life in the military. Her uniform was covered with ribbons and medals from various space missions. I have studied every alien encounter in our database, Mary said. I have analyzed their tactics and their methods. These beings are not warriors. They're bureaucrats with big weapons. The hall became very quiet. Everyone wanted to hear what she had to say. Every species they have conquered gave up without a real fight, Mary continued. They rely on fear and intimidation because actual war is expensive and dangerous for them. They want easy victories, not bloody battles. Senator Phillips stood up again. Colonel, even if that's true, we cannot take the risk. If you're wrong, billions of people will die, Senator Mary replied. If we surrender, billions of people will become slaves, or children will be born in chains. Human culture will disappear forever. Is that really a better choice? In Geneva, Switzerland, the World Security Council was meeting at the same time. Director Sam Collins was showing satellite images and data on large screens. Sam was a quiet man who ran Earth's intelligence services. He knew secrets that most world leaders had never heard. Our deep space probes have been watching the Council fleet for the past 18 hours, Sam said to the assembled intelligence. Chiefs, their ships are powerful, but they show signs of being designed for intimidation rather than prolonged combat. General Lu Chen from China leaned forward. What do you mean? Their weapons are impressive, Sam explained, but their fleet formation suggests they expect quick surrender. They have very few support ships, no mobile repair facilities, no long-range supply vessels. They're not prepared for an extended war. Dr. Rachel Green joined the meeting by video link from MIT. She was Earth's leading expert on alien technology. Her laboratory had been studying every piece of alien equipment that humans had ever found. I have been analyzing the energy signatures from their ships, Rachel said. Their weapons are indeed powerful, but they use enormous amounts of energy. Based on my calculations, they cannot sustain continuous combat for more than a few hours without recharging. Director Collins nodded. That matches our tactical assessment. They are used to enemies who surrender quickly. Meanwhile, in the Pentagon, military leaders from around the world were discussing options that most people did not even know existed. Admiral Lisa Carter was showing classified files that had been secret for decades. For the past 15 years, Lisa said, we have been preparing for the possibility of hostile alien contact. Project Deep Strike has been building weapons and ships in hidden facilities throughout the solar system. General Paul Martinez opened a secure folder. We have 17 deep space combat vessels that the aliens do not know about. They are hidden in the asteroid belt and behind Jupiter's moons. Colonel Pete Johnson added, we also have kinetic orbital weapons that were originally designed to destroy asteroids. They can be retargeted quickly. But the real surprise was what Dr. Tony Martinez had been working on. Tony was not related to General Martinez despite the same last name. He was a physicist who had spent 5 years on a project that everyone thought was impossible. The old nuclear missile silos were not destroyed after the disarmament treaties, Tony explained. They were converted into launch platforms for antimatter weapons. We have been producing small amounts of antimatter for scientific research, but we can weaponize it if necessary. Admiral Carter looked around the room. So we do have options. The question is whether we are willing to use them. Back at the United Nations, the debate was growing more intense. Representatives were arguing in multiple languages. Translators were working overtime to keep up with all the different discussions. The British Prime Minister spoke next. If we have secret weapons, are we prepared to risk everything on an untested strategy? What if our intelligence is wrong? But the representative from Brazil had a different perspective. What if our intelligence is right? What if we are stronger than they think? Do we give up our freedom without even trying to keep it? Dr. Frank Miller, the space scientist, was brought in to explain the technical situation. Based on our analysis, Frank said, the alien ships are very advanced, but they are not invincible. Their technology appears to be thousands of years old. It is powerful, but not necessarily superior to our newest experimental systems. The Japanese representative asked the question that everyone was thinking. What are the chances of success if we fight? Frank hesitated. Unknown. But our chances of remaining free, if we surrender, are 0. The debate continued for 16 hours. Video links connected world leaders across all time zones. President Walsh was talking with the Chinese president. The Russian leader was conferring with the European Union African nations were holding their own emergency sessions. Finally, Carlos Rivera called for quiet. "We have heard all the arguments," he said. "We have examined all the options. Now we must vote. Each nation will cast one vote. The question is simple. Do we submit to alien rule, or do we resist?" One by one, each country announced their decision. The United States voted to resist. China voted to resist. Russia voted to resist. Brazil, India, Japan, Germany, France, and the United Kingdom all voted to resist. Some smaller nations voted to surrender, fearing the consequences of war. But as the votes were counted, it became clear that humanity had made its choice. The final tally was announced. 147 nations voted to resist. 46 nations voted to surrender. Carlos Rivera stood at the podium and looked out at the assembled representatives. "Humanity has spoken," he said. "We choose freedom." Admiral Carter was given the order to prepare Earth's response. She walked to the quantum communication array in the Pentagon's basement. The equipment had been built to send messages across the solar system instantly at exactly 72 hours after the alien ultimatum. Admiral Carter activated the transmitter. Her message was broadcast to the waiting alien fleet in 17 different human languages. The message contained just one word: no. High Counselor Vexthera received the transmission on the bridge of the Council flagship. For several seconds, the alien leader did not move. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever refused the tribute demand. The bridge crew began. Clicking and chittering in confusion, Sub-Commander Rylanox approached Vexthera's command chair. "High Counselor," Rylanox said, "perhaps the primitive mammals misunderstood our message?" But Admiral Carter's follow-up transmission was crystal clear. This is Admiral Lisa Carter of the Terran Defense Force. "Humanity rejects your demands completely. We will not be your slaves. We will not be your resources. We will not bow to your authority. Leave our system immediately or face the consequences." Vexthera's mandibles clicked in anger and disbelief. "Impossible," the High Counselor said. "Ready all weapons. These creatures will learn the price of defying the Galactic Council." The alien fleet began powering up their weapon systems. They expected the humans to panic and surrender at the first sign of violence. They had no idea what humanity had been preparing for the past 15 years. The Council flagship's bridge erupted in chaos when the human response came through. High Counselor Vexthera stared at the communication screen with all 6 of his eyes wide open. His mandibles were clicking so fast that the other aliens on the bridge stepped back in fear. "Replay the message," Vexthera ordered. The ship's computer repeated. Admiral Carter's transmission, in the cold mechanical voice that all Council ships used. "We will not be your slaves. We will not be your resources. We will not bow to your authority. Leave our system immediately or face the consequences." Sub-Commander Rylanox approached the High Counselor's command chair carefully. In all his years serving the Council, Rylanox had never seen a species refuse tribute. Most civilizations begged for mercy within hours of the Council's arrival. "High Counselor," Rylanox said quietly, "perhaps we should contact the Council headquarters for guidance. This situation is unusual." Vexthera's angry clicking grew louder. "Unusual? These primitive mammals dare to threaten us. Ready all weapons immediately. We will show them what happens to species that defy the Galactic Council." The order went out to all Council ships. 300 alien vessels began charging their plasma cannons and energy weapons. The flagship's main gun, a weapon capable of destroying entire cities, started building up power. But something was wrong. Commander Rick Stone was hiding in the asteroid belt in his ship called Shadowhunter. Rick was a pilot who had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. His ship was painted completely black and covered with special materials that made it invisible to most sensors. "All Shadow Squadron ships, this is Stone," Rick whispered. Into his radio, "The aliens are powering weapons. Execute Phase 1 now." Across the solar system, 17 human ships suddenly appeared on the Council's sensors. They had been hiding behind asteroids, inside gas clouds and in the radiation shadow of Jupiter. The Council had not detected any of them, Captain Lisa Brooks commanded the heavy cruiser Defiance. Her ship was much larger than the Shadow Squadron vessels. It had been built in a secret shipyard inside a hollowed-out asteroid over the past 5 years. The Defiance carried weapons that most humans did not even know existed. "This is Brooks to all human forces," Lisa announced. "Remember what they wanted to do to our families? Remember the 10,000 people they wanted to take as slaves? Then what happens when you threaten Earth?" The first attack came from an unexpected direction. Commander Jake Morrison, who had been watching the aliens from his space station, was no longer just an observer. Hidden compartments in his station opened up to reveal massive railguns. "Defend Station Alpha to all ships," Jake called out. "Firing first shots now." The railguns launched metal projectiles at incredible speed. The projectiles were moving so fast that they became white-hot from friction with space particles. 3 Council ships were hit before they even realized they were under attack. High Counselor Vexera watched in shock as his ships exploded. Impossible. Our sensors showed no human military vessels in this area, but the surprises were just beginning. Dr. Tony Martinez was sitting in an underground control room in Montana. Around him were dozens of technicians monitoring screens and computers. Tony had spent 5 years converting old nuclear missile silos into something much more dangerous. "Target acquired," announced Lieutenant Karen White, who had been transferred from space station duty to Tony's project. "Council Dreadnought is in optimal position." Tony pressed a red button on his control panel. "Firing Hammer of God. Deep." Underground, a missile that looked nothing like the old nuclear weapons shot out of the silo. This missile carried a small amount of antimatter surrounded by protective magnetic fields. When it hit the Council Dreadnought, explosion was visible from Earth's surface. The massive alien ship simply disappeared in a flash of light. On the flagship, Q alarms were screaming. Council crew members were running around in panic. There. Sensors were showing human ships attacking from every direction. "How many vessels do these mammals have?" Vexera demanded. "Unknown, High Counselor," replied the sensor operator. "They appear to be using stealth technology we did not know they possessed." But the biggest surprise was yet to come. The Council had detected 50 human ships. When they first arrived at Earth, what they did not know was that humanity had been building a secret fleet for 15 years. Admiral Lisa Carter was about to reveal just how secret. "All hidden fleet units. This is Carter," the Admiral broadcast from her command ship in orbit around Mars. "Execute Operation Freedom Strike." Suddenly, the space around Earth was filled with human ships. They came out of hiding places that the Council had never thought to look. Some had been disguised as space stations. Others had been buried inside moon craters. A few had even been hiding inside the hulls of larger ships. Captain Helen Brooks was now commanding a ship called Liberation. It was one of the newest and most advanced vessels in the human fleet. Helen had trained for this battle her entire adult life. "Liberation to all ships," Helen announced. "Form attack formation Omega. Target their command vessels first." The Council fleet tried to respond, but they were not prepared for this kind of fight. Their ships were designed to intimidate primitive civilizations, not to battle an enemy that fought back with advanced technology. Commander Vexera realized that his fleet was in serious trouble. "All ships, retreat to defensive formation. Call for reinforcements from Sector Command." But it was too late for defensive formations. Colonel Mary Stevens was piloting a small fighter ship called Vendetta. Mary had studied Council tactics for years. She knew exactly where their ships were most vulnerable. "Stevens 2 bomber wing," Mary called out. "I'm marking their shield generators. Hit them with everything we have." Human bombers swept in at impossible angles. The Council ships were trying to track multiple fast-moving targets at once. Their weapons were powerful, but they were designed to fight large, slow-moving vessels, not small fighters. Dr. Rachel Green was watching the battle from her laboratory. On the moon, she was coordinating the technical aspects of the attack from her computers. "All ships, this is Green," Rachel announced. "I'm detecting Council weapon overheating. Their energy systems cannot sustain continuous firing. Press the attack now. The human fleet moved in closer. Ships that had been hiding for years finally had their chance to fight. The Shadow Squadron was picking off Council vessels one by one. The heavy cruisers were trading fire with the alien dreadnoughts. But the most devastating attack came from Earth itself. Tony Martinez had more than just antimatter missiles. He had convinced the world's governments to convert orbital defense platforms into massive kinetic weapons. These weapons fired solid metal rods at incredible speeds. Orbital Strike Platform 7 is ready, announced General Paul Martinez from his command bunker. Target selected. A metal rod the size of a telephone pole shot down from orbit. It was moving so fast that it created a sonic boom in space. When it hit a Council heavy cruiser, the alien ship broke in half. Hi, Counselor. Vexthera's flagship was now surrounded by human vessels. The bridge was filled with smoke and sparks. Half of his crew was dead or injured. Hi, Counselor, gasped Subcommander Rilinox. We have lost 70% of our fleet. Our weapons are overheating. Our shields are failing. Vexthera looked at the tactical display in disbelief. The primitive mammals had somehow built a fleet that rivaled the Council's own forces. Worse, they were fighting with a fury and determination that the Council had never encountered. Surrender, Rilinox suggested quietly. The Council does not. Surrender to primitives. Vexthara screamed, but even as he said it, more Council ships were exploding around them. Human fighters were swarming through the alien fleet like angry insects. The massive Council dreadnoughts were being picked apart by weapons they had never seen before. Admiral Carter's voice came through the communication system of every Council ship. Council fleet, this is Admiral Carter. Your invasion has failed. Surrender now, or we will destroy every last one of your ships. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Galactic Council fleet was being defeated by a species they had considered primitive and helpless. Vexthera looked around his ruined bridge. His mighty fleet was burning in the darkness of space. The mammals he had planned to enslave were offering him the same choice he had given them, submit or die. But Vexthera was too proud to surrender. All remaining ships, he ordered, ram the human vessels. If we cannot win, we will take as many of them with us as possible. The remaining Council ships turned toward the human fleet for one final, desperate attack. But humanity was ready for that too. The final Council attack lasted only 12 minutes. High Counselor Vexthera's desperate ramming order turned into a disaster for the remaining alien ships. The human fleet was ready for the suicide run. Commander Rick Stone watched as the damaged Council vessels tried to reach his Shadow Squadron. All fighters spread formation. Let them come to us. Their ships are damaged and slow. Human fighters moved like dancers in space. They were small and fast compared to the huge alien ships. The Council vessels were trying to ram targets. That kept slipping away at the last second. Captain Lisa Brooks, commanding the Defiance, had a different strategy. Instead of running from the ramming ships, she aimed her cruiser straight at the largest Council vessel trying to attack her. "This is Brooks," she announced to her crew. Ramming speed. All hands braced for impact. But at the last second, the Defiance fired its main guns directly into the Council ship. The alien vessel exploded just meters away from the human cruiser. Pieces of burning metal bounced off the Defiance's shields. High Counselor Vexthera watched his final ships die on the tactical display. His flagship was now alone, surrounded by over 100 human vessels. The bridge was dark, except for emergency lighting. Most of his crew was dead. High Counselor whispered Subcommander Rilinox, who was badly injured. Perhaps we should reconsider surrender. Before Vexthera could answer, Admiral Carter's voice filled the bridge. "Council flagship, this is Admiral Carter. You're surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Vexthera looked around his ruined bridge. 3,000 years of Council victories had ended here, in this primitive solar system. These mammals had not only refused to surrender, they had destroyed his entire fleet. "We surrender," Vexthera said quietly. Within hours, human boarding parties were searching the surviving Council ships. Captain Helen Brooks led the team that captured Vexthera himself. The High Counselor was locked in the brig of his own flagship, which was now under human control. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the captured council ship. She was amazed by the advanced technology around her. Computers that could think, weapons that could destroy planets, ships that could travel between stars in days instead of years. Admiral, reported Colonel Mary Stevens, we have found the Council's database. It contains information about every species they have conquered. Carter walked over to look at the alien computer screens. The list was longer than she had expected. Hundreds of civilizations, thousands of worlds, billions of people living as slaves. My God, Carter whispered. How many species are under council rule? According to this data, Mary replied, 247 different civilizations. Some have been enslaved for over 1,000 years. Dr. Frank Miller was studying the council's star charts. Admiral, these maps show the location of every council world. We now know where their slave populations are being held. Carter made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. Send a message to all human ships. We're not going home yet. We have work to do. 3 months later, the first refugee ships began arriving at the edge of Earth's solar system. They were filled with escaped slaves from dozens of different worlds. The news of humanity's victory had spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Dr. Amanda Foster was waiting on Luna to greet the first group of refugees. She had spent her career studying alien life, but she had never imagined meeting so many different species as free beings. The first ship contained Zephyrians, tall blue-skinned people who had been enslaved for 800 years. Their leader was an old female named Kira, who could barely speak from emotion. You did the impossible, Kira told Amanda through a translator device. We heard the story on every council world. Humanity said no. One word that changed everything. The second ship brought more day refugees. They were short, furry beings who had been used as miners on council worlds. Their leader, a male named Tech, brought Amanda a gift. This is a piece of metal from our home world, Tech explained. But now, because of humans, we have hope that we might see our planet again someday. Back on Earth, President Kevin Walsh was dealing with the biggest diplomatic challenge in human history. Representatives from freed alien species were arriving every day. Earth's cities were filling up with refugees who had never seen blue skies or breathed free air. We need more space stations, reported General Paul Martinez, and more ships. Every day we get messages from slave populations asking for help. Secretary General Carlos Rivera was coordinating the relief effort from the United Nations. The Council Empire is collapsing, he announced to the world leaders. Slave revolts are happening on dozens of worlds. They're all asking for human assistance. Dr. Rachel Green had moved her laboratory to the captured Council flagship. She was working with alien scientists to understand Council technology. Together, they were building new ships and weapons. The Council's technology is impressive, Rachel explained to Admiral Carter, but it's also very old. These aliens stopped innovating centuries ago. They relied on fear instead of progress. Can we use their technology to help the freed populations? Carter asked. Better than that, Rachel smiled. Can improve it. Human creativity combined with Council engineering is creating possibilities that neither species imagined alone. Captain Helen Brooks was now commanding Earth's first liberation fleet. 25 ships filled with human volunteers and alien refugees were preparing to attack Council slave worlds. Our mission is simple, Helen told her mixed crew of humans and aliens. Free the enslaved populations. Destroy Council bases. Show the galaxy that the age of slavery is over. The Liberation Fleet's first target was a world called Nexus 7. According to the Council database, it held over 50 million slaves from 12 different species. The planet was defended by only 3 Council ships. The battle lasted less than an hour. When the slave camps were opened, freed prisoners could not believe what they were seeing. Human soldiers and alien refugees working together. Ships with weapons more advanced than anything the Council had ever built. But the most powerful moment came when the former slaves asked who had sent the Liberation Fleet. We are from Earth, explained Commander Rick Stone. Our leaders asked for tribute. We said no, and we meant it. The word spread faster than council ships could travel. On worlds across the galaxy, slave populations began to rebel. They had heard the story? They knew that somewhere in the galaxy, a species called humanity had proven that the council could be defeated. Dr. Tony Martinez is now building orbital defense platforms around a dozen worlds. His antimatter weapons were being copied by alien engineers who had been forced to build council ships for centuries. The council ruled through fear, Tony explained to a group of freed alien scientists. But fear only works if people believe they have no choice. Humanity showed the galaxy that there is always a choice. 1 year after the battle for Earth, High Counselor Vexera was brought before a tribunal of freed species. Representatives from over 100 worlds had come to see the trial. Admiral Carter was chosen to speak for humanity. She stood before the assembled aliens and looked directly at Vexera. "You came to our world demanding tribute," Carter said. "You wanted our ships, our resources, and our people. You threatened to destroy us if we refused." The courtroom was completely silent. Humanity replied with one word. Carter continued. That word was no. Not just no to your demands, but no to slavery. No to tyranny. No to the idea that might makes right. She turned to address the entire assembly. That one word started a revolution that freed billions of people across the galaxy. It showed every enslaved species that resistance is possible. Vexera was found guilty of crimes against sentient life. He was sentenced to spend the rest of his life helping to rebuild the worlds that the Council had destroyed. General Paul Martinez stood on the bridge of Earth's newest ship, the Liberator. It was the largest vessel humans had ever built, constructed with help from dozens of alien species. Admiral reported Lieutenant Karen White, "We're receiving distress calls from the Andromeda Galaxy. Apparently there's another empire there that's heard about the Council's defeat." Carter smiled. "What's our response?" Paul looked at the star. Charts showing the location of the distress calls. "We tell them that the age of galactic slavery is over. And if they don't believe us, we'll show them what happens when you threaten free people." The message was sent across space to every world, in both galaxies. It was simple and clear, just like humanity's first response to the Council. This is Admiral Lisa Carter of the Terran Liberation Fleet. To any Empire Council, or government that enslaves sentient beings, humanity and our allies demand that you free your slaves immediately. This is not negotiable, the message ended. With the same word that had changed everything, choose freedom, or we will choose it for you. In the depths of space, the Liberation Fleet headed toward Andromeda. Behind them, hundreds of free worlds were building their own ships and weapons. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson in the universe. Sometimes, all it takes to change everything is the courage to say one simple word: no.